Okay, so I decided to do my presentation on cordyceps. Um,
It does taste like cereal.
It does
Like
taste like
stale cereal.
Yeah.
Nice, excellent, that's good to know. So, what are cordyceps? They're a fungus. They're often found when they're parasitizing insects or arachnids. And before we began seeing images of the infected on Facebook and on TV, they were actually best known as an herbal supplement. They're a highly regarded herb in traditional Chinese medicine, and they're believed to have myriad benefits, such as anti-angiogenic benefits, which means they're believed to inhibit tumor growth. There are some studies out there that do seem to suggest that these various benefits do exist, but as with everything with mushrooms, it's very lightly explored so far. Let's see here. So, perhaps we should ignore the warnings we've seen in the renowned documentary The Last of Us. Maybe becoming a mindless follower with little to no thoughts of our own isn't such a bad thing. Obviously, a fungus has never been a cause for concern, right? Or has it? All these things, from least to worst, obviously. All terrible things caused by funguses. And here we have actual footage of a cordyceps infecting a human, possibly, maybe, or not. We can observe the consumption of cordyceps and perhaps the infection of humans to become their spore-dispersing slaves, as we see demonstrated. Some scientists and doctors, such as Scott Roberts, assistant professor of medicine of infectious diseases at the Yale School of Medicine, say this is highly unlikely. He goes on to say that very few fungi are mold spread person to person, but then he raises concerns over Candida auris, a highly drug-resistant fungal infection, frequently passed via nosocomial transmission, which means it's transmitted while you're in the hospital, being treated for something else. And how does that happen? Person to person, from a guest or staff. And though fungal growth has been shown to be inhibited by 1 to 2 magnitudes of temperatures greater than 20 degrees Celsius, which is 68 degrees Fahrenheit, scientists have expressed concerns that climate change may spur adaptation to that it may learn to be able to exist within our bodies. They actually also believe that our bodies evolved to be at the 98.6 degree temperature so as to suppress possible fungal infections. Tom Schiller, a fungus expert at the CDC, believes that it probably took millions of years for a cordyceps species to develop to infect in an ant, and I imagine it would take millions of years for it to even begin to develop in a human. And yet, a paper found evidence of cordyceps having had existed 48 million years ago by noting the bite marks from an ant on a fossilized leaf, and that is in a peer-reviewed journal. And again, you see examples of possible infection, and who's to say? Who's to say? You might say, but Andy, it's just a fungus. They're like mushrooms, sure, athlete's foot sucks, but what's the big deal? They're just a plant, they don't think, they simply grow and do their one thing. Wrong. Forests are connected via a mycorrhizal network. Mycelium, the thread-like mass from which fruiting bodies, the mushrooms themselves, are born, act to transfer nutrients between the flora, but more so has been shown to allow communication. The implications are immense. When you enter a forest, when your foot touches soil, when your fungi tell every connected organism of your presence. In other words, they communicate better than law enforcement agencies in side-by-side neighborhoods. Furthermore, genetic research has shown that fungi are more closely related to animals, to humans, than to plants. Mushrooms and humans store carbohydrate energy as glycogen, while plants use starch to store energy. Fungi and insects use chitin to build cell walls. Plants use cellulose. Mushrooms, like humans, produce vitamin D when exposed to sunlight. And of course, mushrooms, like humans, share a meaty texture and taste. Though we don't know exactly how cordyceps take over the brain of an ant or a spider, we do know through observation that it causes the infected to behave abnormally. An ant begins continuously moving, unable to stop, and leaves its colony. The infection drives it to climb to the highest point it can find, where its jaws clamp down on a branch or leaf, and the fungus erupts from its head, emitting spores to infect other ants. Because also, each cordyceps can only infect that one species. It can't even infect a different type of ant. So, where's the empirical evidence for fungi-human zombification? Though we lack evidence of human infection, consider the following. Have you ever known someone who's really into mushrooms? Have you ever noticed that they never stop talking about them? What do you think could drive such an urge